On the night of his 70th birthday, billionaire William Hale was denied service at the very restaurant that bore his name. No reservation, the manager said. No table available. The old man in the worn jacket would have to leave. But as William turned toward the door, swallowing decades of pride, a young black waitress stepped forward and broke every rule to give him a seat. She had no idea that her small act of kindness would unravel the darkest secret of his past and change both their lives forever. The doctor's office smelled of antiseptic and expensive leather. William Hale sat in the chair across from Dr. Morrison, a man he had known for 20 years, and listened to words that seemed to come from somewhere very far away. Pancreatic cancer, early stage, 2 to 3 years with treatment. No guarantees. William nodded slowly, his face betraying nothing. He had built a $3 billion empire. With that face had negotiated deals and destroyed competitors, and watched his wife die in a hospital bed, much like the ones down the hall. He knew how to receive bad news. "We should schedule you for—" Dr. Morrison began. "No," William said. "Not yet. I need time to think." "William, time is exactly what we're discussing here." "Then a few more weeks won't matter." He stood buttoning his jacket with steady hands. "I'll call you." He did not call. For 2 weeks, William moved through his penthouse like a ghost through a museum. 63 floors above Manhattan, surrounded by art worth more than most people would earn in 10 lifetimes, he found himself counting the things that mattered. His wife Eleanor, dead 15 years. His parents, dead longer than that. Friends. He searched his memory and found only business partners, employees, people who wanted something from him. Children. None. At least none that he knew of. The morning of his birthday, William woke at 5 and watched the sun rise over the city he had conquered. His phone buzzed with automated messages from his companies scheduled well in advance by assistants who had never met him. "Happy birthday, Mr. Hale. Best wishes from the Hale hospitality family." Not a single personal call. Not one. He stood at the window for a long time, watching the tiny figures on the streets below, rushing to jobs and families and lives that meant something to someone. Then he walked to his closet past the rows of $10,000 suits and pulled out an old jacket he had not worn in years. It was the jacket he had owned when he was nobody, when he was just a hungry young man with ambition and no money to his name. Tonight he decided he would find out who William Hale really was. Without the money, without the name, without any of it. He would go to his flagship restaurant, the Hale, the crown jewel of his empire. He would not make a reservation. He would not announce himself. He would simply walk in an old man alone on his birthday and see what happened. It was, he realized later, the most dangerous thing he had ever done. Across the city, in a small apartment that cost more in rent than it was worth, Mina Johnson was getting ready for her evening shift. The apartment was cramped, 2 bedrooms for 3 people, a kitchen that doubled as a dining room, a bathroom with tiles that never quite got clean, no matter how hard she scrubbed. But it was home. It had been home for all 26 years of her life. "Mina, honey, you're going to be late." Her mother's voice drifted from the bedroom, weak but warm. "I know, Mama. Just finishing up." Mina checked herself in the mirror. The Hale uniform, black pants, white shirt, black apron was crisp and clean. She had learned early that presentation mattered in a place like that. The wealthy guests might not remember her face, but they would notice a wrinkled collar. She walked to her mother's room and found Linda Johnson propped up against pillows, oxygen tubes trailing from her nose to the machine by the bed. Heart failure, the doctors called it. A slow wearing out of the organ that had worked so hard for so long. "You look beautiful," Linda said. "I look like a waitress." A beautiful waitress. Her mother smiled, and for a moment Mina could see the woman she had been before the illness, strong, proud, unbreakable. "Be careful tonight." Mina understood the weight behind those words. 6 months ago, during one of her mother's bad spells, Linda had finally told her the truth about her father. His name was Hale, William Hale, the man who owned the very restaurant where Mina now worked. Mina had applied there deliberately seeking answers about the man who had abandoned her mother. But she had never told Linda about her plan. "I'm always careful, Mama," Mina said softly, kissing her mother's forehead. She headed for the door, pausing in the living room where her 16-year-old brother was hunched over textbooks at the kitchen table, earbuds and lost in whatever music helped him study. "I'll be back after midnight," Mina said loud enough to penetrate the earbuds. "Make sure Mama takes her pills at 9. He gave her a thumbs up without looking up. Good kid. They both had to be. On the subway ride to work, Mina thought about her father. 6 months of working at the Hale, and not once had William Hale appeared. He was a ghost, a name on a building. Sometimes she wondered if she was wasting her time. Tonight she would find out how wrong she was. The Hale occupied the ground floor of a glass tower on the Upper East Side. Its waiting list stretched 6 months. Its cheapest entree cost more than Mina made in a shift. Its clientele included movie stars, politicians, and the kind of people who never looked servers in the eye. Mina arrived at 7, clocked in, and took her position in the auxiliary dining area, the less prestigious section. She had been working toward a promotion to the main floor for months, but Marcus Webb, the floor manager, seemed determined to keep her exactly where she was. Around 8 o'clock, she noticed a commotion at the front entrance. An old man stood at the host's stand, speaking with Marcus. The man wore a jacket that had seen better days and pants that were clean but not pressed. His silver hair was neatly combed, but there was nothing else about him that suggested he belonged in a place like this. Mina watched as Marcus's expression shifted from polite to dismissive to openly contemptuous. "I'm sorry, sir," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the room. "We don't have any tables available, and this restaurant requires reservations at least 2 weeks in advance." "I understand," the old man said quietly. "But it's my birthday. I was hoping. Perhaps you might try somewhere more suitable to your needs." Marcus gestured vaguely toward the door. "There are several diners in the area that don't require reservations." The guests nearby pretended not to notice, though Mina could see them exchanging glances, smirking behind their wine glasses. The old man stood very still, and for a moment she saw something flicker across his face, not anger, not even shame, but something worse. Loneliness. Complete and utter loneliness. It struck her like a physical blow. She thought of her mother alone in that apartment. She thought of all the times the world had looked at them and seen nothing worth caring about. Before she knew what she was doing, Mina was walking toward the entrance. "Mr. Webb," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Table 12 just called to cancel their reservation 10 minutes ago. We have an opening." Marcus turned to her with barely concealed irritation. "Mina, this isn't your section, or your concern. My concern is taking care of our guests." She met his eyes without flinching. "And this gentleman is a guest. He's standing in our restaurant on his birthday asking for a table. Isn't that what we're here for?" The silence stretched between them. Other staff members were watching now, and a few guests had turned their heads. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "You want to take responsibility for this? He's yours. Table 12, and we will be discussing this after your shift." Mina nodded and turned to the old man. "If you'll follow me, sir." She led him through the restaurant to table 12, a small table near the kitchen. Not the best spot, but a seat nonetheless. The old man lowered himself into the chair slowly, as if he was not quite sure the moment was real. "Thank you," he said, looking up at her. "You didn't have to do that." "Everyone deserves to be treated like a person," Mina said. "Especially on their birthday." Something passed through the old man's eyes, surprise perhaps, or recognition of a different kind. He studied her face for a long moment. "What's your name?" "Mina. Mina Johnson." She saw him go very still. It was subtle, just a slight tension in his shoulders, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. But Mina had spent her whole life learning to read people, and she knew that her name had meant something to him. "Well, Mina Johnson," he said quietly, "thank you for giving an old man a seat. You have no idea what that means." Mina smiled her practiced smile and handed him a menu. "I'll give you a few minutes to decide. Can I start you with something to drink? Just water, please." She walked away, feeling his eyes on her back the entire time. There was something about him, something familiar that she couldn't quite place, and the way he had reacted to her name. But she had tables to attend to customers to serve a job to keep. Whatever secrets the old man carried, they would have to wait. The meal lasted nearly 2 hours. William ordered conservatively a soup, a salad the house special, not because he could not afford the entire menu, but because he wanted to see how the restaurant treated a modest customer. The answer came in small indignities, the slightly longer wait times, the water glass that was not refilled as promptly as the tables nearby. But Mina was different. She checked on him between her other tables, refilled his water without being asked, and when the kitchen sent out his steak overcooked, she took it back herself and returned with a perfect replacement. During her brief visits to his table, they talked. Small conversations at first, the weather, the city, nothing of consequence. But William found himself asking questions drawn to this young woman who had risked her job for a stranger. "You're working your way through school," he said. It was not a question. Mina nodded as she cleared his salad plate. "Business administration. 1 more year if I can keep up with everything." "That's ambitious. Working here studying, I imagine there's not much time left over." "There isn't." She stacked the plates with practiced efficiency. "But I have people depending on me. My mother's sick. Somebody has to keep things moving." "No father in the picture." The question slipped out before William could stop it, and he watched Mina's expression carefully. Something flickered across her face, not quite anger, but close to it. "No," she said. "He was never in the picture. My mother raised us alone. That must have been difficult." Mina met his eyes with a directness that surprised him. "Difficult for her, maybe. She's the one who sacrificed everything. I'm just trying to make sure it wasn't for nothing." She excused herself to attend to another table, and William sat with the weight of her words. Raised alone. No father. The Johnson name echoing in his memory like a bell he could not silence. When Mina returned with his coffee, William tried to keep his voice casual. "Johnson, that's a common name, but I knew a Johnson once, a long time ago. Linda Johnson. She worked in the restaurant business." Mina's hands froze for just a moment, the coffee cup suspended in the air. Then she set it down carefully, her face unreadable. "That's my mother's name," she said quietly. "Linda Johnson." William felt the floor tilt beneath him. Memories from over 2 decades ago came rushing back, Linda's face young and hopeful, telling him she was pregnant. His own voice cold and calculating, explaining why it couldn't happen. The threats, the termination, the wall of silence he had built to keep that chapter of his life sealed away forever. He had told himself she would take the money. He had told himself she would end the pregnancy. He had told himself it was the right thing for his career, for his future, for the empire he was building. He had told himself so many lies. "Are you all right, sir?" Mina was studying him with concern. "You've gone pale." William forced himself to breathe. "Fine. Just memories. Old man's disease." He wanted to tell her. The words clawed at his throat, demanding release. "I knew your mother. I'm the reason she suffered. I'm your father." But he looked at Mina's face, the intelligence in her eyes, the quiet strength in her bearing, and he knew that the truth would destroy whatever fragile connection they had built. So he said nothing. When the bill came, William left a generous tip, far more than usual. Mina noticed immediately. "Sir, this is too much. I can't accept this." "It's a gift," William said, standing slowly. "For your kindness. for treating an old man like he mattered. Mina shook her head. I didn't help you for money. I helped you because it was right. The word hit William like a slap. She had no idea that she was refusing money from her own father, that the bills on the table were a desperate, pathetic attempt at atonement. Please, he said, and something in his voice made Mina look up sharply. Let me do this one thing, for your mother, for your family. Mina studied him for a long moment. Whatever she saw in his face made her relent, though her eyes remained suspicious. All right, she said finally. But this is a one-time thing. William nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He turned and walked out of the restaurant, feeling Mina's gaze on his back, until the door closed behind him. In the car ride home, he made a decision. He would find out the truth. And then he would do what he should have done long ago. The private investigator's report arrived 3 days later. William read it in his penthouse office, his hands trembling slightly as he turned each page. Mina Elizabeth Johnson, born 26 years ago at Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx. Mother Linda Marie Johnson. Father unlisted. The DNA test obtained from a coffee cup Mina had used confirmed what he already knew. Mina Johnson was his biological daughter. He had a child. He had always had a child, and he had spent over 2 decades pretending she didn't exist. William set down the report and walked to the window. 63 floors below the city moved on without him, indifferent to the revelation that had just shattered everything he thought he knew about himself. Linda had not taken the money. She had not ended the pregnancy. She had chosen to keep their child and raise her alone in poverty, rather than let William Hale erase her existence. And Mina, his daughter, had grown into exactly the kind of person he had never been. Brave, principled, willing to risk everything for a stranger. The question now was what to do about it. William considered his options. He could reveal himself, tell Mina the truth, try to build some kind of relationship in whatever time he had left, but he remembered the way she had talked about her absent father, the barely concealed anger, the pride in her mother's sacrifices. Mina didn't want a father who had abandoned her. She wanted to prove that she didn't need one. If he told her the truth now, she would reject him. So William chose a different path. He would help Mina from the shadows. He would use his money and influence to make her life easier without her ever knowing. It was a lie, he told himself. But he was good at lying to himself. He had been doing it for 70 years. The changes in Mina's life began subtly. At work, Marcus called her into his office to inform her that she was being promoted to the main dining room. Corporate decision, Marcus said, clearly unhappy about it. Apparently someone upstairs thinks you're ready. Mina accepted the promotion with cautious gratitude, but the coincidence nagged at her. A week later, her mother's hospital called. There had been an error in their billing system, they explained. Apparently, Linda Johnson's treatment was covered by an insurance policy they had overlooked. The outstanding balance had been cleared. Mina called the insurance company and spent 2 hours navigating automated systems. No one could explain where the coverage had come from, but the bills were paid. Then came the scholarship. A letter arrived informing Mina that she had been selected for a full grant covering her remaining tuition. Mina had never applied for any such grant. By the second month, Mina knew something was wrong. Promotions, insurance, scholarships, none of it made sense. Someone was intervening in her life. And then there was the old man. William had begun appearing at the Hale once or twice a week, always requesting table 12, always asking for Mina to serve him. They talked during her breaks, conversations that ranged from business philosophy to books to the challenges of growing up without money. She had done her research by now. A simple Google search had revealed everything. William Hale, founder of Hale Hospitality Group, owner of the very restaurant where she worked. The old man in the worn jacket was a billionaire. Why would someone like him befriend a waitress? One evening after the dinner rush had slowed, Mina cornered him as he was leaving. "I know who you are," she said quietly, blocking his path to the door. "William Hale. You own this restaurant. You own half the hotels in Manhattan. Why have you been pretending to be someone else?" William's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "I wasn't pretending. I simply didn't announce myself." "That's not an answer." Mina crossed her arms. "Why do you keep coming here? Why do you keep asking for me? What do you want?" For a long moment, William didn't respond. "You helped me," he said finally. "That night when everyone else looked through me, you saw a person worth helping. No one has done that in a very long time. So this is what gratitude you're following me around because I gave you a table. Not following, watching, trying to understand how someone like you with every reason to be bitter turned into someone so good." Mina didn't know how to respond. "I don't need you to watch me," she said. "I don't need your money or your help. I know about the promotion. I know about my mother's bills. I know it was you." William said nothing, which was confirmation enough. "I'm not a charity case," Mina continued, her voice rising. "My mother taught me something a long time ago. She said that the people who hurt her most were the ones who thought money made them better than everyone else. I won't let you do the same thing to me." The words struck William with the force of a physical blow. He saw Linda in Mina's defiant posture, heard her voice in Mina's accusations. "You're right," he said quietly. "About all of it. I've been interfering in your life without your permission. I told myself I was helping, but I was really just trying to make myself feel better about things I can't change." Mina blinked clearly, not expecting the admission. "What things?" William looked at her and felt the truth pressing against his lips. Tell her now, but the words wouldn't come. "Give me time," he said. "I promise I'll explain everything, but not tonight." Mina studied his face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Fine," she said, "but I'm done accepting help I didn't ask for. If you want to know me, talk to me. Don't buy me." She turned and walked back into the restaurant, leaving William alone with the weight of everything he couldn't say. The following weeks were the strangest of Mina's life. William stopped the secret interventions, but he continued coming to the restaurant. Their conversations became longer, more personal. He asked about her dreams, her fears, her memories. She found herself telling him things she had never told anyone. In return, William told her about building his empire, about the compromises he had made, about the loneliness that came with success. He spoke about his late wife with genuine tenderness, and about the absence of children in his life with a sadness that seemed to run deeper than he admitted. Mina found herself liking him despite everything. There was something beneath the surface, a hunger for connection, a desperate need to be seen as more than a balance sheet. But there was something else, too. A darkness she couldn't quite name. Sometimes she caught him looking at her with an expression that was almost grief. The answer came from her mother. Mina had mentioned William casually one evening, describing the strange billionaire who kept coming to her restaurant. Linda had listened quietly, her face growing paler with each detail. "This man?" Linda said slowly. "What does he look like?" Mina described him, the silver hair, the sharp blue eyes, the way he carried himself. Linda closed her eyes. "William Hale. I knew him, Mina. A long time ago." The words hit Mina like ice water. "What do you mean?" And so Linda told her the whole story. The affair, the pregnancy, the ultimatum, the threats, and the firing, and the years of struggle that followed. "He told me to get rid of you," Linda said, tears streaming down her face. "He said a white man in his position couldn't have a child with a black employee. He said it would ruin him. And when I refused, he destroyed my career and walked away." Mina sat in stunned silence. The kind old man who had listened to her dreams, that man was her father. The man who had abandoned her mother, who had tried to erase her existence before she was even born. Everything made sense now. The obsessive interest, the interventions, the guilt that seemed to radiate from him. He had known. From the moment she said her name, he had known exactly who she was. and instead of telling her the truth, he had chosen to buy her silence. Mina stood up slowly, her hands shaking with rage. "I have to go," she said. "Mina, please." Linda reached for her daughter's hand. "Don't do anything foolish. He's a powerful man." "Let him try to stop me," Mina said. "I'm not afraid of him anymore." The confrontation happened 2 days later in the restaurant in front of everyone who mattered. Mina waited until William was seated at his usual table until the room was packed with the wealthy elite. Then she walked to his table and stood there trembling with barely contained fury. "Stand up," she said. William looked at her, and she saw in his eyes that he already knew. He stood. William Hale. Mina's voice carried across the restaurant, and heads began to turn. "Do you remember Linda Johnson? The woman you got pregnant all those years ago? The woman you fired when she wouldn't abort your child?" The room went silent. "I'm that child." Mina continued, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "I'm your daughter, the one you tried to erase, the one you've been watching and manipulating for months without ever having the courage to tell me the truth." William didn't deny it. He simply stood there absorbing each word like a man accepting a sentence he knew he deserved. "You knew," Mina said. "From the moment I told you my name, you knew exactly who I was. And instead of being honest, you hid behind your money. You thought you could buy your way into my life without ever admitting what you did to my mother." "Mina." William's voice was barely a whisper. "Don't." Mina held up her hand. "You don't get to say my name. You had over 2 decades to find me to apologize to my mother, but you chose to hide." She reached behind her and untied her apron, then dropped it on the table between them. "I quit," she said, "and I refuse every dollar you've ever given me, the scholarship, the insurance, all of it. I would rather struggle for the rest of my life than accept anything from a man who tried to erase me before I was born." "I'm sorry," William said. The words came out broken, inadequate. "You're sorry." Mina laughed a sound without any humor in it. "That's what you have to say? I know it's not enough. I know nothing I say will ever be enough. But I am sorry, Mina." "Then why didn't you tell me? Why did you lie?" William's face crumpled. "Because I was afraid. I was afraid you would hate me. And I was right." Mina looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned and walked out of the restaurant, past the staring guests and the frozen staff, out into a night that felt colder than it had any right to be. Behind her, William remained standing at table 12, surrounded by the empire he had built and the daughter he had lost twice, once through cruelty and once through his own weakness. The days after the confrontation blurred together for William. He stopped going to the office. He stopped answering calls. He sat in his penthouse and watched the city lights flicker on and off, marking time he no longer knew how to fill. The news had spread quickly. William Hale, the legendary hotelier, had a secret daughter, a black waitress who had publicly accused him of abandonment. The tabloids had a field day. Board members sent emails suggesting he take a leave of absence. William deleted them all without reading. He thought about Mina constantly. The look on her face when she had called him out. The way her voice had cracked. She had been right about everything. For over 2 decades, he had told himself that Linda had taken the money, that the pregnancy had been terminated, that there was no child. It had been easier that way. But Mina had stood in front of him and torn that lie apart. And now William had to face what he had always known. He had valued his reputation over a human life, over his own child's life. The cancer diagnosis no longer frightened him. What frightened him was dying without ever becoming something other than what he had been. One morning, William woke before dawn and made a decision. He could not undo the past. He could not make Mina forgive him, but he could stop hiding. He showered, dressed in his best suit, and called his driver. There was someone he needed to see. Linda Johnson's apartment building was exactly as the investigator's report had described it, a 5-story walk-up in a neighborhood that had seen better days. William stood on the sidewalk for 10 minutes before he found the courage to go inside. She answered the door on the third knock. The years had changed her. The hair was gray now, the face lined with struggle, but William recognized her immediately. Those eyes. Mina had inherited those eyes. Linda stared at him without surprise, as though she had been expecting this visit for a long time. "You'd better come in," she said. The apartment was small but clean, filled with photographs of Mina at various ages. Birthday parties, graduation ceremonies, ordinary moments captured and treasured. A whole life he had missed. Linda did not offer him a seat. She stood by the window, arms crossed, waiting. "I came to apologize," William said. "Not because I expect forgiveness, but because you deserved to hear it long ago, and I was too weak to say it." Linda said nothing. "I was cruel to you," William continued, his voice breaking. "I was prejudiced and selfish and terrified of what people would think. I used my power to silence you, to push you away, to pretend you and our child didn't exist." He took a breath. "I know now that nothing I say can undo what I did. You raised Mina alone. You sacrificed everything while I built my empire, and she turned out extraordinary not because of me, but despite me." Linda remained silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but soft. "I waited so long to hear those words. I used to dream about it, you showing up at my door, finally admitting what you did. I thought it would feel like victory." She shook her head slowly. "It doesn't. It just feels tired." William nodded. He had not expected anything else. "I'm not going to tell you I forgive you," Linda said. "I don't know if I ever will, but Mina is the best thing that ever happened to me. Every hard day, every struggle, she was the answer. So, whatever you tried to take from me, you failed. She's here, she's brilliant, and she's more than you will ever deserve." William felt tears sliding down his face. He did not try to hide them. "I know," he said. "I know." The press conference happened 3 days later. William stood before a room full of reporters and cameras. "I have an announcement to make," he said, his voice clear and steady. "Several weeks ago, I was publicly confronted by a young woman named Mina Johnson. She accused me of abandoning her mother and attempting to coerce her into terminating a pregnancy. Those accusations are true." The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. William held up his hand and waited for silence. "I'm not here to defend myself. What I did was indefensible. I made choices that I will regret for the rest of my life. I cannot undo those choices, but I can try to make amends." He outlined the changes. 30% of his company shares would be transferred to a foundation supporting workers of color and immigrant employees in the hospitality industry. A scholarship fund in Linda Johnson's name would provide educational support for single mothers. New policies for worker protection would be implemented across all his properties. "I'm not doing this to buy forgiveness," William said. "I'm doing this because it's right. And because my daughter showed me what courage looks like. She refused to be bought. She demanded that I see her as a human being." He looked directly into the cameras. "Mina, if you're watching, I don't ask you to forgive me. I only ask that you know I see you now. I see what you've overcome. I see what you've become. And I am proud of you, even though I have no right to be." William wrote the letter by hand. "Mina, I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I lost that right a long time ago. I'm writing because you deserve the truth, all of it. I knew who you were from the moment you told me your name. I recognized your mother in your face, and I felt something I had not felt in decades, fear. Not of scandal, but of facing what I had done. I was weak. Instead of telling you the truth, I hid behind my money. I thought if I helped you enough, I could earn my way into your life without ever admitting what I had taken from it. I was wrong. You don't need my help. Your mother raised you to be stronger than I ever was. I'm dying, Mina. Cancer. I have 2 years, maybe 3. I don't tell you this to earn sympathy, I tell you, because I want you to understand that I'm not playing a long game. I simply wanted you to know the truth before I'm gone. If you never want to see me again, I understand. But if someday you want to talk not as father and daughter, but as two people trying to understand each other, I'll be here. Thank you for giving me a seat that night. You thought you were helping a lonely old man on his birthday? You were. But you were also teaching me that kindness doesn't have conditions, that dignity isn't something you earn with money. I spent 70 years building an empire. You showed me in one evening that I had built it on nothing. William Hale. A year passed. William's 71st birthday arrived quietly. He spent the morning in treatment, the afternoon in meetings about the foundation, the evening alone in his penthouse with a book he couldn't concentrate on. He had not heard from Mina. He had not expected to. When the doorbell rang at 8 o'clock, he assumed it was his assistant. He opened the door and found Mina standing in the hallway. She looked different, older somehow, though only 12 months had passed. She wore no makeup, and her coat was the same one she had been wearing the night she quit. "I read your letter," she said. "I didn't write back because I didn't know what to say. I still don't." William nodded slowly. "You don't have to say anything." "I'm not here to forgive you." Mina's voice was firm. "I might never be ready for that. But I'm here because I want to understand. I want to know who you are. Not the billionaire, not the man who hurt my mother, but the person underneath all of that." William felt something loosen in his chest. "That's more than I deserve," he said. Mina almost smiled. "I know. That's why I'm here. Because I get to decide what you deserve, not you." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Mina spoke again. "There's a diner a few blocks from my mother's apartment. She used to take me there when I was little. Nothing fancy, just good food." She looked at him steadily. "Do you want to get dinner?" William reached for his coat with trembling hands. "Yes," he said. "I would like that very much." At the diner, they sat across from each other in a cracked vinyl booth surrounded by the clatter of ordinary people living ordinary lives. Mina ordered for both of them her mother's favorites. "I have a question," Mina said after the food arrived. "That night, your birthday, why did you come to the restaurant dressed like that? Why did you want to see what would happen?" William set down his fork. "Because I had just learned I was dying," he said. "And I realized I didn't know who I was without the money. I wanted to find out if there was anything left underneath." Mina considered this. "Did you find your answer?" William looked at his daughter, this stranger who shared his blood, this woman who had shown him mercy when he deserved none. "I found something better," he said. "I found someone who showed me who I could have been, and maybe in the time I have left who I still might become." Mina didn't say she forgave him. She didn't call him father. But when the check came, she reached for it first. "Next year?" she said. "If you're still here, same place?" William nodded, not trusting his voice. "Same place," he managed. Outside, the city moved on without them. But inside a small diner that smelled of coffee and griddle grease, two people who had been strangers were beginning the slow, difficult work of becoming something else. Not father and daughter, not yet. But perhaps in time something like family. A black waitress had given a lonely billionaire a seat on his birthday. She hadn't just saved his evening, she had forced him to face himself. And in the end, that was the greatest gift anyone had ever given him. You know, Mina's story reminds me that sometimes the smallest act of kindness, a moment when we choose to see someone as human, can change everything. Not just for them, but for us too. I'm curious, have you ever done something kind for a stranger that ended up meaning more than you expected? Or maybe someone did something small for you that you never forgot? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if this story touched, you consider subscribing to the channel. We share stories like this every week, stories about redemption, forgiveness, and the complicated ways people find their way back to each other. Thanks for being here. See you in the next one.